Welcome back. Here I'm going to talk about an easier way to select data. On one of my earlier videos, I told you a way to select cells using Shift key or the Control key. But that will be helpful if you're using few information or if you want to select few number of cells. But if you have a lot of information, in my case, I have a lot of information where it goes to 2,340 cells, or rather 2,340 rows. So if I'm to press the arrow key or if I'm to scroll down, it'll take some time. So I want to make it more fast. One way of doing that is if you want to select data, you can press Shift and Control key and the down arrow will select all the cells to the very bottom. So what does it do? Actually, when you press Control key and the down arrow, it will bring you to the very last row with data, because your very first row or the cell where you were had data. So when you press Control and the down arrow, it will bring you to the last cell of that type. That means where there's data. So I had data in my very first cell. So when I press Control and down arrow, it took me to the very bottom cell with data. So it'll take me to the very first or very bottom cell with data. So what I want to do is select. So what I do is when I press Shift and down arrow, it selects the cell. So I use the two functions, Control and the Shift. So Control will bring me to the very bottom cell, and Shift will select the cell. So I press Shift and Control both the cells and press the down arrow. So it selects all the cells in between. I can do the same to the columns. So I press Shift and Control and the right arrow. It selected all the cells to the right side. Rather, all the columns, I can say, to the right side. So that is the easier way of selecting, but we'll say that you started selecting from column B. So now you pressed Control, Shift, and down arrow, and then Control, Shift, and right arrow. And you forgot to select column A. Now there's no way for you to select, because if you press Control, Shift, and left arrow again, it will select the other side, but not the right side. So you have to make sure that you start from the very first column, very first cell, or else you will be omitting certain cells or columns. So if you want to select all of this data, we'll say all of Argentina data, I can go to the very last row with data for Argentina and select the very last cell for that particular row. Then I can select everything. But we'll say I want to copy row by row to different places. So in that case, if I copy like this and paste it somewhere else, all will be together. So in that case, I can use the previous function, Control plus Shift key, but it will select the whole column. I need only up to Argentina. So what I can do is I can make a break here. I can insert a new row. So there will be a break. So this will be the very last cell with data for this data range. Then I can copy Control and Shift and down arrow. It will stop at the end of Argentina. So then I can copy. So then I can copy, and when I press up arrow, it will go to the very top cell again. Then I can copy wherever I need, and then we'll say I need only the salesperson, and I copy only that one. So maybe to a different place. You can go to paste special, right click, and you have different options to paste as numbers. So any of formatting will not be saved. Or if you have different functions in your cells, you can go to formula. So you have different options to go. But as we are still in the very basic level, you can just press Control V. It'll paste. I can undo it by Control Z. So you can you can do breaks like this if you need only few data, or if you need this data at different places where you need to copy column by column, not all the information at once. So when you press Control and down arrow, it brings you to the very bottom cell with the data. But if you were in somewhere here where there are no data, what will happen if you press Control key? So if you press Control and down key, it will go to the very bottom, because until the very bottom, there's no data in any of the cells. If you press Control and up arrow, it will bring you to the cell where there is data, because you were in a cell where there's no data. So when you press Control and up arrow, it will stop at the place where there is data. If you press Control and up arrow again, so you started with a cell with data, so it will go to the very end where there is data. So I had a break here, so until there, the command brought the cell. I hope you understood the commands and it will be helpful for your everyday Excel use. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.